What's good, folks? Family, friends, loved ones, enemies, frenemies, wizards, witches, muggles, mudbloods, people of Middle-earth to another episode of Disguise Coverage, the only podcast that gives you an equal amount of blueberries in each muffin and presented by the best pizza in Buffalo, New York. That is One Pie Pizza. Find the online menu in the episode show notes, whether here on YouTube or whichever podcasting app or platform you are listening to this show on. I'm your host, Anthony Prohaska. Find me on Twitter at pro__ant. That's pro_ANT. Find me on Blue Sky at ProAnt. No underscores there, just PROANT. In this episode of Disguise Coverage, we are officially in April, and that means we're starting to hit the home stretch before we get into the Buffalo Bills actually official done and dusted draft at the end of this month. And in accordance with that, we're starting to hit the home stretch of our own here on this show. The past several weeks, even the past month or so, has been kind of setting the table for what the roster looks like this year, what it'll look like going forward, positional archetypes the Bills look for, and then juxtaposing that and putting that into conjunction with their current needs, what that looks like, how to maximize value in this draft class, tying it all together with free agency, so on and so forth. But the dust has settled a little bit on free agency. Now we are fully shifting into draft mode. And with that being said, tonight's episode kicks off the next several weeks of episodes where we will be diving into specific position groups on each of these shows, the biggest positions of need for the Bills, talking about the prospects that fit these needs the best, where they can be had, full evaluations, rankings, player conversation, value, fit, scheme, structure, all that kind of stuff, and full deep dive of X's and O's and evaluation to kind of put things into perspective before the Bills officially draft who they draft at the end of this month. And this episode, as I hope you would have guessed by the title and the pieces in the description, will focus around the edge position and the edge class. And with that being said, I am joined by my guest in this episode to dive into the 2025 edge grouping. That is Mr. James Foster, NFL and draft analyst of the 33rd team. James, I think this is your fourth appearance on the show. I think somewhere around there. I can't remember officially, but you're awesome. I appreciate you taking the time to join me. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
So we'll get into it from a high level perspective and then dive into the meat of all of it when it comes to prospects, rounds, all that kind of stuff. High level thoughts on this 2025 edge class, where you think the strengths are, or, certain value pieces that you like, anything and everything from a high level, what you think about this 2025 edge class.
I think it's very strong, compared to last year. Like I had 10 day one or day two grades on edge rushers. This year I have 16, and I think it's probably pretty similar to last year as far as top end talent. But where this class is really deep is like late second to third round. There's so many guys that I think could either be like potential edge ones, or I feel really good about them being an edge two, and that's going to be kind of that early third round grade. So it's a good year to need an edge, but unfortunately, if you do need an edge, you could say the exact same thing for pretty much every team in the NFL. So I don't necessarily think you're going to be able to get like insane value, because every team is going to go into this draft thinking like, oh, well, why don't we take an edge in the second round?
Yeah, that's fair. And, for those who don't know, our thoughts and analysis here are always kind of to keep it organic. I don't know what James is going to say. James doesn't know what I'm going to say, but I'm in lockstep with you on where the value is for this grouping. I feel like, and that's also, I think, what's funny, but also kind of, I guess you could play either side of it. But I feel like what's kind of annoying with like the Bills draft picks in this class, like where they are, and, they're pick 30 in round 1, 2 second rounders, no third, and then just a whole bunch of day 3s. And I feel like, especially with edge, there's so much value starting in like the middle of round 2 through like the middle of round 4. But I feel like the Bills are in this weird spot for edge where you have to hope that, someone falls to you at 30, or hope someone falls at 56 or 62 in round 2, or you're potentially reaching for someone maybe at the end of round 2 because you're not going to pick again until pick 109. And then it's like you play that game and hope that there's still someone there in round 4, which technically they could do given how their edge grouping is built out right now. But it's, yeah, I feel like edge is this weird, it kind of puts them in this like Bermuda Triangle or no man's land positioning because, depending, again, it's all dependent on who's there, but maybe reaching for somebody at the end of round 2, or you're trying to play that waiting game and hope you're, cross your fingers and hope somebody's there in round 4, or maybe try to package some of their stuff in round 3 or from day 3 and move up and get a third rounder or something like that.
Yeah, it would definitely, I think, makes a lot of sense to try to trade one of those second round picks back into the third, because I agree with you as far as where the value kind of is.
Yeah, and it's an interesting group and a lot of usefulness. I think there's some fun skill sets and traits throughout, again, like really through the first 2 days, early into round 3. A lot of usefulness, some schematic versatility and variety, but some dudes who tested well, some guys with some really good tape. With that being said, James, let's dive right into it. All right, we'll start with round 1. And for those who don't, know, or who are live joining us live and playing at home, James and I are going to go through edge targets for round 1, for round 2, and then day 3, talk about it from a broad scale. Obviously there's a ton of picks for the Bills on day 3 and also more rounds. So that's kind of how we're going to break it down. For those of you watching live, or if you're not watching live, that's fine too. Feel free to play along with us. Who do you want in each of these rounds? Who are you targeting? Why are you targeting them? What do you think of our targets? Do you hate our targets? Do you hate us? Whatever's on your mind, feel free, put it in the chat. Let us know. Super chats obviously get priority because I respect the monetary donation, and the color attracts me away from my notes like a cat with a laser pointer. So again, anybody joining us live, chat it up, talk it up, engagement. Let us know your thoughts, questions, comments, concerns, anything and everything. James, you are the guest. The floor is yours. When it comes to the Bills, pick 30 in round 1 right now. If they are looking at edge at that position, who or whom, if it's multiple guys, I don't even know if that's right, do you think should be targeted by them at pick 30 in round 1?
So I have 8 edge rushers in my top 30. But Abdul Carter is number 2 on my board. The other 7 are all between 16 and 27.
Oh, wow.
So there's like a huge log jam, and I've actually got 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20 on my board that are all edge. So I'll just give you them in order really quick. Shamar Stewart at edge 2. I've got Mike Green at edge 3. Michael Williams, edge 4. Donovan Izaraku, Jalen Walker, James Pierce, and then at 27 overall, I've got Braden Swinson out of LSU. So it's a lot of different, like almost players that kind of play different positions, but a lot of different styles. I think that Shamar Stewart and Michael Williams, it's pretty fair to expect them to be off the board for the Bills. The same thing I think can be said for Jalen Walker, who's probably going to go a lot earlier than I would be comfortable taking him. And so realistic options, if Mike Green falls based on the off-field stuff, it would have to depend on whether or not they were comfortable with that. But I think that just as a pass rusher, I think he's one of the he has like one of the best pass rushing plans and like counter strategies in this class. The way that he gets into counter moves is just seamless and, able to string moves together so effectively. So I really like what he brings on the field. Donovan Izaraku has been one of my favorite players. Like since that Florida State game really early in the year, maybe like week 2, he popped off the screen, and I've been following him ever since, and like just love so much about his game. It's just, and like I've got him a lot higher than consensus. I've got him 19th on my board. It's just like what concerns me about him is we've seen players like him that just have kind of a capped ceiling in the NFL because he isn't that explosive, and he pretty much never wins with power. And he's a great speed rusher, really good bend, long arms, good hand usage, but I think he might kind of be limited to like a complementary sort of role. James Pierce is a really interesting player because He doesn't fit into a lot of like prototypes or kind of categories or boxes that you want to put him in. It's like a weird blend of strengths and weaknesses where he's really explosive in a straight line. He's tall, but he has shorter arms. He doesn't really bend that effectively. There are flashes where he's really good with his hands, but I think he struggles to like like break contact when
Mm.
blockers get their hands on him and kind of sustain his rush effort. And then you'd expect him to kind of be soft against the run, but he was actually really had like a sturdy anchor this year and plays with a good motor. So kind of, yeah, just a weird blend of skills and somebody that also there's kind of some noise like off the field with him. And being like having gone to Tennessee, I can verify some of that. Like I heard stuff like way before, like way early in the season. So yeah, definitely an interesting character for sure. And then Braden Swinson, I love. He just kind of does everything at like a B+ level. He can win with power, good explosiveness, not the best bend, but good enough with his hands and explosive off the ball enough to where he can win as a speed rusher and then gives you some inside counters as well. So I think somebody who led the SEC in pressures, tested pretty well, and has such a layered and multifaceted skill set. Those kind of guys don't last long in the draft, and having him as a top 32 player is definitely a lot higher than most people have him. But I mean, he's like 81st on the consensus board, and to me, there's no way he gets that far.
Yeah, he's got an interesting. The first thing that let me pull up I switched out of it. The first thing that I have in my notes in my evaluation for Swinson is I wrote some of everything: size, length, bend, dip, athleticism, hand usage, juice, speed, some speed to power, some push pull. I wrote that he's caught in between, not necessarily in a bad way, but yeah, like I feel like everything from a measurable standpoint, from a play style standpoint, like you could make the case that he's like a 6 to like a 7.5 out of 10 for like all these different pieces. And I wonder for him, like, what does a team tap into? Like, how do they use him? And, playing at Oregon before he went to LSU, I find his skill set really intriguing. Ezra Rocco is one for me as well, who I loved him the first time I watched him. And I think it was the first game I watched. I think it was the Pitt game where he had like a million pressures, or it was 14, or like 14 pressures, like 6 stops, some ungodly number. And he flashes the hands to get the right tackle to go for the punch. And he just effortlessly dips underneath the hands, turns the corner, flattens, and buries the quarterback. And like that type of bend in the lower body, like, and then between the torso and the hips, the fluidity, but then also like the body control and the core strength to turn that corner and flatten. And you watch him do that regularly, go through, whether he's ghosting somebody and just beating them with speed or athleticism or fluidity, or he also has some good core strength to kind of, if he can get that corner, he doesn't have to come through clean. Like he can kind of power through and flatten and rip through that shoulder a little bit. Some of my concerns for him just really come down to, and you talked about it, but kind of like the ceiling being capped. Like I wonder what he looks like from a final form perspective in the NFL. Like, does he play at 250? Does somebody try to add a little more weight to him so he can play at like 255? And with how long his arms are, 34-inch arms, fifth longest in this edge class, does somebody try to build that frame out a little bit and hopefully help him, I think, hold up at the point of attack better, especially against the run, against NFL size and strength? I'd love for him to just be more of a bully against tight ends. I think adding some weight could do that as well. And then given the frame, I think he could add some weight without losing too much juice. And the rest of his testing is good. 6.94 in the 3-cone, a 4.19 in the shuttle. Like, he tests well. You see the athleticism, the pass rush plan, the understanding, the moves. The big thing for me too, the hand precision. Like, watching him with his hand usage, when he's disengaging from a block, or if he's going with a cross chop, it's just like you constantly see the hand on the wrist. Like, he's just got such good hand-eye coordination in terms of where he uses his hands and the timing of all of it, and then timing that and tying that into the fluidity and the athleticism is really nice. He's somebody that I I love how many edges you have in round one. That's awesome. And I also love too, like how much you stick to your boards every year. Like, and you acknowledge what the consensus is, but I feel like there's so many people in the draft space whose evaluations or rankings mirror or mimic what one particular person has or what the consensus has. And year after year, I remember you and I both sitting here last year gushing about how much we love AD Mitchell, and we didn't care like where anyone else had him or what the concerns were. So I always respect
You have
that.
to just the decision I made when I first started doing it is like I do not care about being right or wrong. Like obviously I would love to be right, but if you like play it scared and worried about like bad takes, people like pulling up bad takes, it's like it's just you're not going to be it's not going to be interesting analysis, and it's you're going to have times where you like deep down think something, but then you like kind of drift towards the consensus and end up regretting it. So I'm just like try to just like fully give my analysis.
Yeah. And I do these. So I like lock myself, not necessarily lock, but like I avoid rankings from, I don't want to be influenced. Like I don't want to know what so-and-so thinks about a player or a grouping because I don't want it to influence my rankings or my board. So I like, ironically, like I avoid as much draft analysis as I can until I'm done with all my stuff. So I don't get influenced subconsciously or consciously.
Right. Exactly. The one thing I will say every year there are, I find this especially watching the edge rushers. One thing you really notice is who the bad tackles are in college football.
Yes, good call.
Like last year, it was the UCLA left tackle. Like poor guy. Everyone had their best game against him. I mean, he's like one of the worst Power 4 college football players I've ever seen. Oh, you mentioned the Pittsburgh game. After they lost Branson Taylor, who will probably get drafted, he played like 5 games. Their tackles were so bad. So I kind of like, I almost treat Pittsburgh for edge rushers as like an FCS team for evaluation purposes. Not that that's Izaraku's only good game, but it is. I remember like he dominated that game. But if you watch kind of like every ACC pass rusher, you start to realize that like everybody had their best game against Pittsburgh. The other one that I would mention is Mississippi State. Every SEC pass rusher had their best game against Mississippi State. So yeah, those are the 2 caveats that I would throw out there.
No, that's a good call. It's funny too, also seeing like, because the first thing I do and always to figure out the games, I usually like to watch 4 to 6 games per player, and I always try to get like their most productive game statistically, their least productive game statistically, and then in between that, I'm looking for the teams that have again, if I'm looking for an SEC edge, I'm like, okay, how many games did you go up against Will Campbell? So I'm looking for all their games against LSU, for example, and go for the competition. And yeah, it's funny to see like when you're looking at certain guys, like the ACC guys, and I'm like checking out their stats. I'm like, oh, okay, so-and-so had a good game against Pitt. So-and-so also had a good game against Pitt. And it's like, and you just watch that like continue. Or if I notice something like I have to make it, who was it last year? And there was one this year too. Like a starter. It's going to drive me nuts. It was an edge rusher earlier. And I don't want to waste too much time trying to find it, but somebody, the right tackle, like his elbow got jammed into him early because the running back tried to chip and it caused some awkwardness. And then the right tackle went out and then this dude just feasted. And I was like, okay, this is a good game, but also is against the backup right tackle. Like even those little nuggets of like, it just matters so much. But yeah, Izaraku is one that I find interesting from a pass rush perspective, and especially for like a Bills fit, like they don't need him to do so much rundown work right now, given how their edge grouping is constructed. And I feel like he can be more of a mercenary and a hunter on pass rush downs and situations. I wouldn't mind the pick there if he's the pick at 30. Again, just the fluidity and the length and how it all ties together. But he is somewhat of a non-archetypal fit for them. He has the requisite length, but they love speed to power, compression guys who will just run through you. And if you can dip a little, that might be fun, but traditionally they haven't gone towards that. So
he's also kind of redundant. Like he's a better player, but kind of redundant with Javon Solomon as like the shorter guy with long arms who's like really bendy.
Yeah, and I wonder, like, what do they think of Solomon? Do they see him as like an upgrade to that? Do they think it's redundant? Do they not care? And so that's where I see like a necessarily not being a fit. The one that I think is like their dream fit if someone were to fall. And also, even though I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth. I think this would be a great fit for the Bills. And what I'm about to say, I think this guy would be a great fit for the Bills and a pick that I would welcome. I also think it's a player that the Bills would 1,000% welcome, but it is a type of archetype and skill set that I have wanted them to gravitate away from. If Mykel Williams somehow falls, he is their dream. Like the size, the length, the power, the compression. He is. I don't want to say he's like a. I hate doing comps because then people get the wrong idea. But like him and Greg Rousseau operate in the same stratosphere, 1,000%. Like, and if you have those guys, the edge setting presence against the run, the length. I really like how much he played through that ankle injury that just, I thought he broke his ankle against Clemson. I remember watching that game live. I'm sure like so many people were, and I was like, oh my God, this dude's going to be done for the whole year. And he managed to just play through it. I think he would see an uptick in production and just even in terms of how he gets used, if he can play the actual edge and not have to be the 4-eye like he is so much with Georgia's mint front and what he does. I thought he has pretty good, like decent to good change of direction considering his size and his build, but he's got good eyes, which you expect from Georgia. He's good at recognizing blocks, screens, really good at reading mesh points in the backfield. He's got a good surf technique. He can shut down the read option or even has the stride and the change of direction to string it out a little bit against mobile QBs. Good explosion in his movements, not necessarily burst, but explosion from like a power perspective. When you see him get into somebody, he moves them. And you would hope you would get that given the fact that he's 6'5", 260 pounds, 34 and 3/8 inches arms. That's the second longest for edges at the combine. Got some ability to kick inside on passing downs and situations. There's a lot of guys that I wouldn't be upset at if they took an edge at 30, but Mykel Williams is the one that I would really be like legitimately happy about if he somehow falls. I don't think he will, just given the traits and the injury and what his tape looked like the year before, but he's one that if he fell, I would be overjoyed for.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the arm length, like based on the tomfoolery that was going on with whoever was measuring these people's arms, like he probably has over 35-inch arms. I mean, just on the eye test, I was shocked that it was just like 34 and 3/8.
Right. You know, it's funny. I did the same thing. Like I was like, oh, wow, this is good. And then I was like, wait, really? Only that? Like I would have thought it would have been even a little higher.
Yeah. And like everybody was making so much of a big deal about how he only ran a 4.77 or whatever. And then it comes out that he had a 1.61 10-yard split, which is 69th percentile for all edge rushers. And he did that at 267 pounds. Like one of the first things I wrote in my scouting report was that he has tight ankles, but then it's like when it comes out he has an ankle injury, it's like, man, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
So maybe he is a little bendier than I thought he was.
Especially when you watch him towards like the end of the year, like by the time they play Texas in the SEC championship, you start to see some more of like he can put his foot in the ground and explode back inside. You start to see some of that kind of juice come back to him a little bit. Again, he's not a juiced up type of player, but some of that come back as the ankle started to get a little healthier.
Yeah, and he's so good against the run. I mean, yeah, he's awesome against the run. I ultimately think, though, this is kind of a pointless conversation from the Bills' perspective because I think the NFL is a lot higher on Mykel Williams than like draft Twitter. When I was at the combine, I was talking to two different like outside linebackers or defensive ends coaches, and like asking them how what they thought of the edge class, and it was like Abdul Carter at 1, and then Shamar Stewart at 2, and like, or I'm sorry, Mykel Williams at 2, and like they thought the gap between Carter and Williams was a lot smaller than the gap between Williams and everybody else. I remember like one guy I was talking to, he was giving me a spiel on Mykel Williams, and I was like, yeah, it'll be hard to like really separate him and Shamar Stewart. And he looked at me like I was crazy. Like, why would you even consider those people in the same conversation? yeah, I think the NFL loves Michael Williams from what I've heard.
Well, I mean, yeah, like the length and size, and then the pedigree and the explosion. Like he's built like an
And
NFL
just
dude.
like, yeah, like the snap in his hands when he makes contact with someone.
Yes, and I'm very much a known quantity, like high floor type of dude when it comes to the draft. Because even I say it all the time, like, and you know this, even though as much as someone can be a surefire, can't miss prospect, there is always the chance that not even like a chance. There's a good chance that someone's not going to hit, and I just think part of the reason Michael Williams is also edge 2 for me. And I just think because he represents such a good floor, like even if he doesn't progress or hit the ceiling that you would want as a pass rusher, all right, he can still compress the pocket. He's still going to be a really good like run defending edge. Like you're going to get a lot of edge 2 quality reps from him for years to come, which is again that for me, like I'm very much like, what is the known quantity if we don't have to play any games, like and worry like, what does this guy hit his ceiling? How do we develop him? What can he come in and do now and hang his hat on for as long as he can? And I just think you're going to get that run defense production and some compression of the pocket, which is huge, especially for the Bills. I do want to circle back to Shamar Stewart because I feel like so many people, he lit up the combine, and then so many people have kind of gotten off of him coming from the tape. He's your edge 2, like you mentioned. What do you like about Shamar Stewart? And why does he? I mean, obviously, I have an inkling in terms of what you like, but how does he end up as edge 2 for you? And what are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I think Shamar Stewart is just well, edge is a position, I think, more so than anything, where I will really just bet on the traits.
Fair.
Obviously, you want a guy that has production and traits, but if you can't get both of those, I would lean towards the athleticism. I think that his pass rushing production was limited by a few things. The role that he played in Texas A&M's defense really decreased the number of like true pass rushing opportunities that he had. You know, when people see stuff like pass rush win rate and pressure rate, they think that the denominator in that calculation is all of the times that you had a chance to rush the quarterback, but it's really the amount of times that you were on the field for a passing down. And you know, especially in college, guys are in these schemes where they're being asked to defend the run over anything. And like when you see stuff during draft season about like a guy's, this is the one that always kills me, is a guy's slow off the ball or slow off the snap. It's like, yeah, they're read stepping, or like they're reading the run, you know, like they're not everybody plays Abdul Carter's role in their defense, where every snap they're firing off the ball and just trying to get to the quarterback. And so
are they one gapping? Are they two gapping or playing gap and half? What's their responsibility? Yeah, it ties into so much.
So like you could look at a game where Shamar Stewart has 25 pass rushing snaps, and it might be like 5 or 6 true one-on-one reps throughout the entire game where he would actually have a chance. So that's the first thing that limits him. The second thing that limits him is that he's a terrible pass rusher. Like his hands are so bad. He
so many times he just like uses, I feel like he like leads with his face or his chest, and then sometimes it works. So I'm like, okay, I guess I don't blame you, but yeah, it's so funny that you say that.
It's so segmented, and like you can tell that it's almost like before he went on the field, his D-line coach was whispering in his ear and like, okay, 2 steps upfield, chop with the hand, turn your hips. And he's like, it's like he's like counting it in his head, and it never sequences together smoothly.
Yeah.
A big thing that kills him is that for as explosive and big as he is, you'd think he'd be this dominant power rusher. And his bull rush is actually pretty ineffective because he's never pointing his hips towards his opponent when he bull rushes. So the power just kind of dissipates. I mean, there's a ton of technical stuff that like he's got to clean up when he rushes the passer. But you know, kind of similar to Michael Williams, who like I have almost an identical grade on. I think that what he can bring you as a run defender does give you a bit of the floor. I think like really the key distinction between Michael Williams and Shamar Stewart is that I think Williams is a lot more under control and like technically sound as a run defender,
Mm,
whereas Shamar Stewart is kind of a high effort like disruptor.
mm.
Um, and then I think Shamar Stewart is a much better athlete when you project towards pass rushing, like more explosive, way more flexible. But Michael Williams, I think, for as unpolished as he gets made out to be, he's actually a lot more refined with his hands.
Mhm.
So yeah, they get kind of grouped together and like they're similar in terms of broad archetypes, but a lot of differences there. And kind of as a tiebreaker, like I'm just going to bet on the better athlete.
Yeah, it's fair. I think the whole, it's for years, the whole, like, I feel like recently the whole traits over production type of deal. And it's wild for some of, like, if you're looking at his spider chart for Shamar Stewart, his measurables. So 98th percentile for broad jump, 96th percentile for vert, 90th percentile for 40-yard dash, 91st percentile for 10-yard split, 75th percentile for arm length, 96th percentile for wingspan, 60th percentile for weight, 80th percentile for height. Like, so I get it. Like, if you want to bet on the traits and the size and that package, and if you believe in yourself, as a team to coach him up and kind of refine the technical aspects for him, bet on the traits. And I'm really interested to see where he goes. And that little nugget from you about, what, like, how the league kind of views him. I'm very interested to see, does he get taken in round 1? Does he slip into round 2? How much is somebody really betting on the traits versus the production versus how much they think they can clean up? And then given that he does have, some snaps under his belt in A&M, is it someone just hasn't gotten through to him? Does he not have the capacity for it? I think it's a really interesting conversation, especially with when you get a dude who just lights up the combine like that and has these traits and this size, this uniqueness, like all within this frame. It's super intriguing. So I get it. And I like
Yeah,
it too.
this applies to every player, but like especially with Shamar Stewart, he's somebody where like how his meeting and interview went
Good call.
would determine so much because like there's so much technical stuff that he's got to clean up. And if you meet him and he's like, super fired up to get working and like seems like he has a great football character, I'm absolutely willing to bet on that. But if it's like, he is just gonna like kind of coast on athleticism, or if that's the vibe you get, then I would probably in this class there's a lot of options in his range. I would probably just go with someone else.
Yeah, does he feel disengaged or does he lack enthusiasm? There's so much. I made this joke before that, like, because obviously we get the college all 22 and we're able to watch the tape. I wish there was like all 22 of the interviews so I could see the interviews.
Oh my
Like,
god,
dude, I want to know like that's one of my favorite once teams make their picks and we get like those post draft videos from teams throughout like the beginning of May and they show some of the meetings. Like I wish we had that. I know that there's no chance of it. I wish we had that now because the meetings are so important. Like the character stuff, everybody when you get to the NFL in some semblance or fashion has size and strength and speed and athleticism and all that. The stuff that separates, the math from the good and the good from the great and the great from the Hall of Famers is their mentality and how they see the game and understand it and their personality and all of those pieces. And you can't get that from just watching the tape. You might be able to try and put some breadcrumbs together, but it's hard. Does this guy turn off here? Okay, he's got a great motor all the time. Maybe that suggests this about his character, but you don't know. Yeah, and I would kill just to like, if there was some black market camera footage for like interviews at the combine or Senior Bowl or top 30 visits, like, man, it would just help us be able to round out our evaluation so much and be able to see a guy like, oh, wow, this guy was really smart. Or, yeah, this guy has a great attitude. Or, man, this guy's a real jerk. And his tape is like kind of meh. No, I'm not betting on the traits. I wish we had that so bad.
problem is I probably would have raised Kyer Elam's grade after like I saw that he had the notebook.
Fair, dude. He's one that, and everyone here in the chat, and I didn't like him a ton coming out. I didn't like his tape at Florida. I thought he was just so grabby, and I was worried about how it would translate. But again, the traits, he's a great example. The traits guy, right? The length and the size and the athleticism, the frame and all that. And then, yeah, you see that interview come out after, and he's really smart, and his notebook and all the scouting he does. And you think about like, well, the family that he comes from, he knows how to be a professional. And myself and Eric, we had him in the film room a couple seasons ago, and we broke down tape with him. And he had an interception against the Dolphins in the wild card round earlier that year, and technically earlier in that like year, but the previous season. And we're breaking down that play with him. And he's talking about like, okay, I'm the cloud corner. Their Bills were playing cover 2, and he's like, okay, I'm the cloud corner to that side. They run a smash concept. I'm spacing them out. But then he gets into like, I can tell by the angle of the quarterback's shoulders, he's looking to hit the corner. So I just keep sinking and I read this. And he was doing that throughout the entirety of the episode. He's one that, I didn't like him coming out. He wasn't I didn't have a round 1 grade on him. I think he was in my 3rd tier of corners. But the traits made sense. He seemed like a smart dude. I've spoken to him, and he's extremely smart. I don't get like how things just didn't click. But again, that happens. That's another example of why you do you go with higher floors or known quantities? Because even when you think something should click, man, like sometimes it just doesn't. And I always, that one will always perplex me. Like, not necessarily because I thought he was going to be good, but I was like, okay, I could subscribe to this. I'll always think of that. And I love Trent McDuffie, and he was my corner 3 in that draft. And I was so mad when the Chiefs traded up ahead of the Bills and got McDuffie. It was killer. He was, if I remember, because that was the Stingley and Sauce draft. So it was, I had Stingley 1, Sauce 2, McDuffie 3. My corner 4 actually, I forget who I had as corner 4. Corner 5 though was Roger McCreary, and I didn't care that he had short arms. I was like, put him in man coverage and let him play on the outside. I don't care. So I've been very happy to see him learn slot. Like, he didn't play any nickel at Auburn. He started doing it at the Senior Bowl because he had to. And then he's become a legitimate like slot corner. And they got some fun dudes in that Tennessee secondary. Him and Brownlee. Like, I like so many things. And then Jeffrey Simmons is a monster up front. Trevondre Sweat. They got some fun dudes in Tennessee, which you obviously know all about. Anybody else that you want to talk about in terms of a round 1 target, or you want to move on to round 2?
Yeah, let's move on to round 2. Those are kind of all the guys that I think should really be in play at 30.
Absolutely. All right, cool. Let's pivot to round 2. And I echo your sentiments here. Not to get too far ahead of myself. Paisan says, was it Andrew Booth Jr.? Yeah, I had Booth as 4.
I missed on Booth.
I believed I didn't think the injuries would continue, but and not to kind of play that card or make an excuse. They derailed what I thought he could have been. His tape at Clemson, he had some great tape, and he was just hurt all the time. I should have known, especially me being a high floor person and the injuries. Good call, Paisan. Thank you very much. Yeah, this round 2 conversation for edges, this is really where I'm looking at edge for the Bills. In my dream of dreams, the Bills come out of round 1. If Michael Williams somehow fell, I would be very, very, very cool with that. I don't think that's going to happen. My dream scenario for round 1 out of realism plus a dream is Trey Amos, corner from Ole Miss. I love Trey Amos. I know some people have come around more on him. I have a round 1 grade on him. Some people are getting more on that bandwagon ever since Daniel Jeremiah put him in a mock and he had him going to the Packers at 26. Before that, I was on an island and people were yelling at me for having the Bills, potentially looking at him in round 1. I love Trey Amos. I would love for Jahdae Barron to fall. He's not going to fall. That's not happening. So my heart of hearts, Trey Amos is the pick at 30. I would love for the Bills to get an edge in round 2. So I'm very excited to dive into this segment of the episode, James, because like you said, and like we talked about in the beginning, really like once you start getting into round 2, it starts off like 2 to 3 rounds with 2, 3, and 4, where there's a lot of value with the edge position. And with the Bills having 2 picks in round 2, those 2 picks being 56 and 62, a lot of good opportunities for them to get some real value from the edge grouping in round 2 here.
Yeah, it's really deep. I think the first guy to kind of start off this tier would be Princely Umanmielen for me, who has really fallen a lot lower than I expected. Like I've got him still at 49, so right in my top 50. And he's in like the 80s to 90s on a lot of people's boards. I just think like the size, only 244 pounds at the combine, but I think his playing weight is a lot bigger than that. He was 265 at the Senior Bowl. You've got like he's just a natural speed rusher. Started to mix in kind of the inside spin counter a lot this year, and I guess I don't think like he's a great power rusher, and I thought that like doing some of the drills he didn't at the combine he didn't seem to be a very natural bender. But I just think the size traits combination for me would be worth taking in the second round. And then I'll just kind of list off like the next few guys that I have in that tier. So in order, I would have Oladejo out of UCLA at 61 overall, edge 10. We've got David Walker out of Central Arkansas, Ashton Gelati out of Louisville.
Oh, nice.
And then we go Nick Scorton, Texas A&M, Landon Jackson, Arkansas, and Jordan Birch out of Oregon.
Okay. What are your thoughts on JT Tuimoloau?
So I've got him a little bit lower. I've got him edge 18, which sounds really bad, but he's 113 on my board. I definitely like him more than the other Ohio State edge, I will say.
Okay, that was kind of where I was leading it to. Like, I feel like him and Sawyer keep getting lumped together a lot, and I get it, but Sawyer's lack of athleticism scares me, and the short arms scare me even more. Even though I like his motor and how all the typical demographic things to give, like, oh man, he seems like he has a great work rate and he's a high character guy and what a motor. But like the short arms scare me, and the lack of juice and athleticism scares me. Like I have JTT significantly higher than Sawyer. But yeah, that's kind of where I was leading into that. So I'm glad you kind of seconded.
Yeah, I don't really see Sawyer as an NFL athlete, honestly.
It is, yeah. If you're gonna have
what's his standout trait besides going up against Cameron Williams, who is terrible?
And see, that's my thing. Like, I'm not a person that has to be like, well, you have to tick these boxes. Again, like I mentioned, like in that draft several years ago, McDuffie had short arms, and I loved McDuffie. McCreary had even shorter arms. McCreary had T-Rex arms. And so I'm not like, I think there are certain measurables or benchmarks that you ideally hit, but I believed in Tank Dell a couple years ago. Like, I do think outliers can make it. The thing that scares me with Sawyer is the short arms plus not having something else to mitigate that or make up for it. Like, that means, so if you're not a plus athlete and you have short arms, that means you have to win with technique like all the time. And that's just such a hard thing to do. Like, you in the NFL, to win with technique that much, to have that be your calling card, that's just
it almost never works at edge. And the thing is, it's not even like Jack Sawyer's a technician. He's like, he has like solid, a solid set of moves, and like he's not raw or anything.
But he's not this clinical teach tape type of edge.
Right. Yeah. So he's got like a really thin lower half, and like people talk about him like he's just this shutdown run defender, but he gets put on his back sometimes too. I mean, he's like big enough that he does pretty well in college, but yeah, I have Jack Sawyer at 156 on my board.
Fair.
So yeah, I think that he, if I was a GM, I would just kind of expect him to get taken a lot earlier than I would be willing to take him.
And so a lot of
JTT has like, I really like his build.
Yes.
I love like shorter, sturdier edge rushers with long arms. He's got some really devastating power. He has like, I really like his pass rushing plan and overall move set. He's just not a very explosive or bendy athlete, and so there's a lot of reps where he might do everything right. It just doesn't end up going anywhere. But I think he's a really solid run defender and should be like at least an early down starter. So yeah, I like his floor a lot.
Yeah, I second that. So you mentioned a lot of names that I also have in contention here in round two. I'm gonna so I don't know where to start. Let's start with Oluwafemi Oladejo. You mentioned him. The Bills met with him recently. They like him a lot from what the reports are. he's somebody who just seeing his measurables, he just tick and play style. He ticks so many Bills boxes. 6'3", 259 pounds, 33 and 3/8 inches arms, a 36.5 foot vert. You watch him play, it's length and strength, it's power and pad level. He's newer to the edge position, was playing like some off-ball linebacker for UCLA even as early as the first couple games this season in 2024 before he fully moved on to edge. What I think is nice, and what I did with his tape was I started watching games earlier and then watch games later in the year to kind of see, okay, is he starting to learn? Is he starting to change up some of his stuff? Like, what's the time on task at edge starting to do for him mentally in terms of being a football player? And while I do think he still needs to improve some of the basic things like block recognition, scheme recognition, taking on doubles, he's very inconsistent reading the mesh on read options. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's terrible, but he does show in-game learning and adjustment and in-season learning and adjustment, which I thought was nice. And UCLA uses him a bit in that spinner role that the Rams use Michael Hoyt in. So he's on the edge, and then, on passing down in distances, he might be lined up in the A gap or the B gap. He's kind of in a 2-point stance. You don't know where he's coming from. I think he has enough athleticism to drop into coverage. Not great stop-start ability, but enough athleticism that you could use him on some sims and some creepers. Flashes a cross chop every now and again, and then just the basic technical things and time on task stuff. Improving his pass rush plan and his overall move set. Same with some of his transitions. I'd also like to see him use more speed to power because I think he's built for speed to power given his size and frame. But I think he's also apparently, from what I hear, a very high character guy, and I just think he's going to fit for a lot of teams. I have more of and so I like that you mentioned him, and part of the reason why I wanted to lead off with him here, I know a lot of Bills fans have been clamoring with him, especially since the Bills met with him and that kind of popped up on the radar. I have more of a mid to late 3 into an early 4 grade on him, but I think because of the character and the frame and the traits and the improvement you saw, given how raw he is, I do think it's very possible that if he creeps up into a day 2 pick, like early round 3, mid 3. And part of my reason of talking about him now is I think if the Bills want him, I don't think you can wait till round 4 to get him. I think you have to potentially take him at the end of round 2. And for some, it may seem like a reach. I think he's the perfect late 2 to late 3 kind of guy. But because the Bills don't have a 3, if you want him, you got to take him in round 2.
Yeah, I have an early 3rd on him. You pretty much hit the nail on the head with the analysis. I would definitely echo wanted to see him use speed to power a lot more often.
That was going to be his go-to, and I was so excited. And I didn't he flashes a spin move more than he does speed to power, and I was like, oh, I was a little disappointed.
Yeah, he pretty much as far as wins, it's pretty much he's just spamming the cross chop over and over again, and sometimes it's just hitting the scissors on the crease of the wrapping paper, where it just it's cooking every game. The Penn State game, if you've seen that.
Oh, dude, the Penn State game against. So I did different clips of him from different games, but Penn State, I did its own clip thing. I had 8 or 9, just some of his plays against the run, some of his pass rush reps. It was just such a great game for him. And yeah, the cross chop, I think is the perfect microcosm of what he is. Because when he hits it, it's gorgeous. It's clean. It's beautiful. And he's through. And other times, it's just very varying levels of effectiveness within his game, which I think speaks to.
He goes on a lot of cold streaks as a pass rusher, for sure.
Good call.
But yeah, I like the overall build, just kind of the dense, powerful build. And I feel like his motor and effort and playmaking ability as a run defender, and just the way that he is so assertive into contact. You mentioned the read option. I'm so sick of watching these edge rushers surf technique and defend the mesh point. How many times do NFL teams run read options? And that feels like 80% of what they coach in college football. So
because everybody in college is running the read option, and then unless you're playing the Ravens, it doesn't really happen in the NFL.
Yeah, I don't blame. I'm not saying I blame the coaches for prioritizing that. It's just That's kind of one of those elements of
Oh, yeah.
the game that doesn't translate that much. But yeah, I mean, I don't really see like true edge one potential with him, but definitely somebody that's kind of just scratching the surface because of being so new to the position.
Yeah, I think he could end up creeping up into it, adding like the understanding of technique and the being able to physically apply it within games, like having the knowledge plus the physical application is, I don't want to say it's such a lofty thing, but I do think that's a hard thing to kind of do and put together. But I do think it's a realistic expectation that he could be an edge too. Again, the athleticism, the size, you put him into a defense that can kind of marry those two things, and the ability as a run defender and the willingness and the physicality along with it is part of what I think is so intriguing with him. And then another couple names, we talked about him briefly. I do like JTT here. Again, for those who don't know, it's not Jonathan Taylor Thomas, depending on if you were a 90s kid or not, if you know who that is. It is JT Tuimoloau from Ohio State. I do like him here at the back end of round 2 for the Bills. And you hit on so many of the pieces. It's his build. I like that. I like how he's built personally. And then I think it would fit what the Bills want. Power, compression, some speed to power, a good to good enough get off, some athleticism. Like you talked about, not a lot of dip or like body lean, but you want somebody who's just kind of like a heat-seeking missile coming off the edge, and he'll get displaced every now and again from a down block standpoint. But you look at the competition he played against, the defense that he comes from, the understanding. I think he's somebody that operates with a really high floor. And I just like the package of physicality and athleticism and juice. There's some explosion. There's some actual burst. There's some physicality. There's some hand usage. There's some length. And all of it is in this physical compression, speed to power, explosion type of package, which is why JTT really intrigues me. And then Nick Scorton, again, and all of this too for people like it. A lot of these names are, and nobody's doing it in the chat, but just in case someone's watching or listening, I hate when someone's like, "Oh, what do you think? I can't believe you're not talking about so and so." It's like, well, we might think they might go at a different point, or later or earlier. They could be coming up in the next segment. Who knows? But Nick Scorton is one similar to kind of, the Shamar Stewart conversation. You look at how the guys were used at A&M, and Nick Scorton, he said it as much. I was looking up stuff because he played, for those who don't know, played at a much lighter weight at Purdue. Had some really great tape at Purdue last year. Comes to Texas A&M, plays a little heavier, but he talked about how much more was on his plate mentally at Texas A&M and how that allowed him to be more versatile, how he's being used, so on and so forth. And I recognize the Purdue tape is nice, but I still like some of what he was showing at Texas A&M. I wanted to see him use more of that inside spin at A&M like he used at Purdue, but the ability to rush from both sides, you've got some athleticism baked into it. I thought he had good eyes and quickness and physicality on the line of scrimmage. I would like to see him go with more speed to power, but you see some of the technicality that he has, the hand usage as a rusher, some chops, swipes, good hand fighting, a good cross chop. He got absolutely torqued by Will Campbell in the LSU game, and then followed it up a couple like reps later by hitting that inside spin and beating him instantly, and then also decking him on an inside run defense rep later. I think he offers, again, he's another guy kind of from a play style standpoint, not necessarily from a build or frame, but a play style standpoint, I think similar to kind of JTT, which is why I want to talk about them together, where both guys are kind of like give you some run defense, give you some power and some physicality, can do some rush stuff, have some athleticism, not necessarily this big frame, traitsed up type of player, but give you this higher floor kind of understanding and someone that can plug in and kind of be effective right away.
Yeah. So I definitely, I'll just say, like, I hated Nick Scorton's tape this year.
Yeah. Did you watch the Purdue tape?
Yes, but
yeah, especially like it's so annoying.
So I did like I didn't really do like preseason rankings, but I did like a what I would do mock draft over the summer, and Nick Scorton I had going with the first overall pick.
Wow.
And then now I've got him 73 on my board. So okay. Like I've been all over the spectrum with him.
So this is personal for you.
Yeah, I think he's such a like just smart and nuanced pass rusher.
Mm.
I don't think he's like a really good enough athlete to
Yeah,
be like a number
fair.
one guy in the NFL.
Fair.
At his size, I think the lack of a consistent bull rush was really disappointing.
Yep.
Um,
Another guy
but
that I
like,
thought would like go through people more, especially considering somewhat shorter arms. Well, yeah, actually shorter arms, 29th percentile for arm length. I just expected, and his overall frame, I expected more go through people than I saw.
yeah, it's so the lack of bull rush is disappointing. You mentioned like the spin, which is obviously one of his that was kind of like his signature move. I will say teams kept a guard kind of like posted up in the B gap last year to cut off his spin move pretty consistently. There were a lot of wins, like clean wins that he got with that, where they got kind of cut off by getting doubled.
Fair.
But the thing with Scorton is that it's a huge gamble, and like I still think there's upside there because there's a chance that like what we saw last year was purely just that he was playing with bad weight, and I think you could be kind of getting like my high end comp for him is Tamba Hali.
Oh,
So like I think I still think there's upside there. I just One of my biggest lessons that I learned like early is don't do the thing where like their penultimate year was better than their last year and you like say like, well, I'm just going to go off of that because it just like it never ends up working out for me. Example number one being Will Levis.
oh yeah.
So yeah, even though I recognize that I think it could be that it's like 2023 was the real Nick Scorton. I don't really like take that bet very often.
No, that's fair and super understandable. Like I'm in somewhat of a similar boat. Like I very much prefer to go off of the most recent tape. What the Purdue tape and the Purdue in general conversation I think is so interesting for him, considering like he immediately, once the season was done at A&M, he immediately lost like 20, well, not immediately, but lost 20 to 25 pounds. And it wasn't like, oh, until I could test faster at the combine. Like he reduced weight almost immediately, which made me think he was playing up to what was wanted of him, not necessarily what was best for him. And again, but it is a gamble to a degree. But I think if you get somebody again at the back end of round 2 who has enough of a high floor, is a smart enough player, like I would love to get a guy back there who has maybe potentially a higher ceiling, but I think there is effectiveness for him built into kind of that position and that type of value in terms of what he brings. And then if you can tap into, the 2023 version of him was real, but to your point, it is a bit of a gamble. I did want to ask you about, another guy you mentioned. Again, we're going to talk about a lot of the second round guys that we went through already and that you mentioned. Ashton Gelati out of Louisville. Do you think he can truly live on the edge as like an edge, or do you think he's more of like a 3-4 defensive end?
Yeah, I do. I mean, he really like kind
The
of
short arms scare me. That's kind of the reason I'll say it. The short arms scare me a little bit, but he's such an ass kicker with like his speed to power and physicality.
Yeah, I mean, he backed up, his athleticism with a really impressive combine performance, like 6.94 in the 3-cone, had a 36.5-inch vertical, ran a 4.65. Some of his tracking data from the combine was pretty impressive too. Like he had his max speed on the corner drill, like turning the corner, was 84th percentile over the last 3 years. Max speed on the wave drill was 89th percentile. Like I think he's a good athlete to win out on the edge. Has just a really like, so there's a lot of players this year. I was talking about it on Twitter. Like it's fitting that the year Brandon Graham retires, we're getting like all of his clones entering the NFL, because you've kind of got like the Charmander, Charmeleon, Charizard meme, just like with how many, like there's Elijah Roberts out of SMU,
Nice.
there's David Walker out of Central Arkansas, there's Ashton Gelati out of Louisville. It's these like kind of densely built 6'2", 265 power rushers that also have a cross chop, have like a nice pass rushing plan that they sequence together. Just so similar in the way that they win. I like how Ashton Gelati is so quick to get to counters and kind of like take what the tackle's giving him. So like if he's going for the cross chop and the tackle really opens up his hips and sells out to stop the speed rush, he's not just going to go with that. He's going to quickly get into a hump move and hook under the inside shoulder, hit through the B gap, like just really instinctive in that area. And like his speed to power is so consistent. The people for whatever reason always talk about like if an edge rusher is 6'2" or something, they list that as a weakness. Do they do the same thing with offensive linemen? I'm like, why would you ever want a tall person on the line of scrimmage? Because it's like in the same scouting report, you'll see somebody like Deion Walker, for example. Number one strength is going to be, massive, tall, like gigantic defensive tackle. Number one weakness is going to be plays with high pad level. It's
yeah.
I wonder if those are maybe related. And like with Gelati, I mean, you never write down in your notes that he's like too high in his bull rush. He's just so consistent getting under people's pads. So yeah, I really like that. I don't think he has the best anchor against the run, but really, really heavy hands to just ragdoll, especially tight ends. Like if you got him one-on-one with a tight end on the backside of inside zone, he's launching him into orbit. So yeah, I love just so much about his game. I think he's one of the more underrated players in this class for sure.
Yeah, he's got some fun tape. And again, I hate doing the measurement thing. 5th percentile for arm length. I didn't even see this. 1st percentile for hand size. He's got very tiny hands and short arms.
Yep.
And it doesn't scare me off completely because, again, he's got some really fun tape. But it made me wonder, like, okay, with how he's built and how he plays and the power and physicality, like, does more of like a 3-4 DE like suit him as opposed to like a true edge. But then you see him kind of function out there against good competition. Like he's got some good tape against like Clemson in spurts and Notre Dame. And it's not just like, okay, he's racking up against like some weaker like ACC offenses like Virginia or whatever.
He did dominate Pittsburgh though.
Oh man. I mean, one of you and I could probably suit up right now and put up like 5 pressures each against Pitt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were some embarrassingly bad, just like technique on some of those reps. But yeah, no, he did well against good competition for sure. He had a rep. I'm pretty sure he had a rep that is what got the Texans 2nd round pick tackle for Notre Dame, Blake Fisher, like got him benched. Just walked him back into the quarterback. But yeah.
Good call. I might have to go back to the 2023 tape and see that. Oh, I like that. Good call with that. Let's grab another 2nd round guy you mentioned, Landon Jackson from Arkansas. I'll let you lead on him first. This is one thing that I tend to hold true to, regardless of position. Guys that are high cut scare me, especially at a position where I would like some. I'm not a big like. You have to have bend and you have to have dip and all that type of stuff. But high cut guys scare me. But the violence that he plays with, the power that he plays with is very intriguing, kind of offsets some of my concerns. But I kind of use that as an intro to Landon Jackson. What do you think of the edge from Arkansas?
I was definitely underwhelmed with his tape. He's kind of just a guy that cross chops every play and like if the tackle happens to jump set and like he cleanly knocks down the outside hand, then he can, get a path around the corner. But if not, it's just going to be like failed cross chop after failed cross chop. And I didn't like he is a powerful player, but I didn't think he really used speed to power at least as much as I was expecting. Like that I feel like should kind of be the one of the primary ways that he wins. But
especially when you got he's in the 96th percentile for the broad jump, the 97th for the vertical. Like he's got legitimate explosion. You can see him move, and yeah, it's like, dude, use your length and your explosion and just go through people.
Yeah, it's interesting because he has the jump testing, but then like the 10-yard split is 46th percentile. And like I would almost, when we talk about explosiveness for edge rushers, I feel like there's like explosion into contact and then there's upfield burst. Like I
Yes,
think he's explosive into contact
agreed.
and like that really it's like more like twitchy, like short area explosion. But then as far as just it's almost more like speed, upfield. There are times where he actually like will cleanly beat the outside hand, but just doesn't have that closing speed to convert the win.
Mm.
So yeah, I mean, I think I think he's got like a high floor. And I'm lower on him than consensus for sure. I have him 87th and he's 50th on the consensus board. So again, like one of those players that I don't necessarily hate. It's just if I was a GM, I expect that he's gonna be off the board before I would really be interested in taking him. So,
Mm.
yeah, I would probably just like go with someone else.
High cut dudes scare me. Again, like I said, like
Yeah.
especially at that type of position. Like I just prefer, again, and this could be a horrible evaluation thing for me, but guys that are high cut just scare me a little bit, which is part of what I was pleasantly surprised with Swinson from LSU. Like as soon as I turned on the tape and saw how like he was built, I was like, he's a little high cut, but there's more there. He's not overly stiff. Like there's not too much rigidity to his hip movements and how he moves and how he dips and he can do different things. Again, he's not the dippiest or the bendiest, but there's more there. And so I was like, okay, so he's high cut, but there's still something there to the lower body. Yeah, with Jackson, it does just scare me a little bit there. Someone who so I don't believe this is a name that you mentioned, but this is one that he's an outlier for the Bills. He's an outlier in a multitude of fashions, given his size and frame in some aspects. I have a 3 on him, but well, actually, no, let me go back. I have mid 3 on him. I don't think he's going to be there in the 4th, potentially when the Bills pick. So if they wanted to get him, it would have to be around 2. I didn't know where to include him in the discussion, but I'm going to include him here. What are your thoughts on Josiah Stewart from Michigan? Because he just plays like a velociraptor, and I'm just tremendously attracted to dudes who play like velociraptors.
Yeah, I love so much about Josiah Stewart's tape. He's right inside my top 100, so he's 98th overall, 16th ranked edge. I comped him to Samson Ebukam as a player that's like just a much better run defender than you would expect for his size. Like I'm expecting that I'm going to be writing a bunch of weaknesses about, like him holding up against the run. And I think like you have to mention the size, but dude, he's a force, like setting the edge and taking on pullers. Love
Dude,
that.
watching him taking on he's just murdering, like pulling guards left and right, like meeting them in their chest or hitting them in the shoulder, bouncing off, making the tackle. Like to watch him play at that size and see it not be this limiting piece for him. And for those who don't know, 6'1", 249 pounds, and also 5th percentile for arm length, 25th percentile for hand size. So he's small in a lot of forms and fashions, but and I hate to say this because I feel like it's a cop out, but he's a small guy who plays big and the violence is so real.
I've been kind of rejuvenated or revitalized to like trust my gut with smaller players that play big because of Nolan Smith. Like I remember watching him and just being like, okay, this guy does not check any measurement boxes, but he is a dude against the run, and it was still able to translate in the NFL. So,
and he was another one too. Like sometimes you mentioned a little bit ago with Landon Jackson. I feel like Nolan Smith, granted, he had both things, but I think Stewart has both things you mentioned. I think Smith and Stewart both have the upfield burst, but then also had the explosion and power into contact, which again, you'd like to see from a kind of the Elvis Dumervil type of mold. If you're smaller, you have that leverage. So then use it and make yourself a battering ram. And much like Nolan Smith, Stewart, couple reps where he's covering tight ends and man coverage. He can drop into the low hole or the hook to curls. I don't think he's as fluid and as athletic in space as Smith, but I love that idea of the comp of like, because he's not the elite athlete that Smith was, which was tremendously elite. But yeah, like Man, you're making me like him even more. I was hoping you were going to talk me off the ledge. That kind of made me feel even
Well,
better.
so the thing that I will say though, I do have some actually concerns like with pass rushing
Yes.
because he's really explosive and fast, and he has a devastating speed to power.
Yeah.
The problem is that he's somebody that's going to require a long runway to build up speed. Like he can only be a wide 9 where he has like
Yeah, that's fair.
space to build up momentum.
Yeah, because what happens if
I,
you get him
I
closer, say he's like even just in a 5 against NFL length and size, if they just jump set him and get their hands on him, like
right.
you got to hope that he can swipe right away and get by. If not, if they get their hands on him, it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of his. I put together a speed to power reel for Josiah Stewart like a few months ago of like all of his wins from the last couple of years, and it's like half of them when I was doing the little play indicator thing, I had to do it off of the screen because he wasn't like
Comes from
pre-snap. He wasn't even
yeah.
on the screen
You
pre-snap.
have to do one of
He's
those
so
where you
wide.
like put the arrow like pointing off screen to be like, here's where he's going to come from.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I also thought that his he wasn't as effective against like better competition this year. So another example of a team like if you see a dominant win against USC's offensive line,
Yeah, they're
take it
a
with a
little
grain of
bad.
salt.
Yeah,
And
he pressures and forced
he
downs.
had an insane game against USC.
Yeah.
But then like Oregon was pretty quiet. Ohio State was relatively quiet. Texas was pretty quiet. Like those were, like take PFF grades for whatever, but like those were his 3 lowest PFF pass rushing games,
Yeah.
and like I felt like that lined up with the tape. So, yeah, but man, he's such a fun player.
Yeah, I'm just dudes who play like Velociraptors, just something that it does something. But I think you're very spot on. Like kind of there is, and again, I hate saying this, but there is something to be said for like certain measurables that guys in theory should tick at certain positions, and he is a significant outlier in, for those counting at home in height, 2nd percentile, in weight, 13th percentile, arm length, 5th percentile, hand size, 25th percentile. And he does have juice. He does play violent. He actually can act as like a force player and as a spill player off the edge. And he's got such good like juice and explosion in his lower body and in his game. But yeah, that size piece is a very, very real aspect. Anybody else in this second round range that we potentially didn't hit on? I know you had a bunch of dudes that we went through most of them though, but anybody that you feel like deserves a little more attention or a shout here? Actually, potentially talk about David Walker out of Central Arkansas. I know you listed him and a couple of people in the chat mentioned him as well. What are your thoughts on David Walker? Unless there was something else you wanted to
Yeah,
speak to, and then I can shut up.
I love David Walker. Just like playing on sandbox mode. Based on his level of competition, but he just like obliterates FCS tackles with his bull rush. Can bend the corner at like extremely tight angles. Really quick moving laterally to just like on tape. He's crossing over a gap in like a single frame of the video, and then like he's got pursuit speed, closing burst. Again, the arms are concerning, obviously, but just under 6'1", 263 pounds, ran a 4.69. Like I think he's got a good explosiveness and probably a little bit limited as far as like shedding blocks in the run game would be kind of my biggest weakness for him. But I think he can be a productive pass rusher kind of on the Brandon Graham to Melvin Ingram spectrum.
Oh, I like that spectrum. I like that. He's another dude who I like that. There's so many like fun flashes from him. From a Bills perspective, the arm length is such a prerequisite for them. And even somebody who's, smaller in size, like Javon Solomon, has long arms. Like, so that is such a big thing for them at the edge spot. But yeah, I want to, I know you mentioned him. A bunch of people in the chat mentioned him as well. So I want to get your thoughts.
Well, one guy that I will mention who passes the arm length or checks the arm length box would be Jordan Birch out of Oregon,
Yeah, talk about
who
Jordan.
is one of the better power rushers in this class.
Yes.
He has just like an imposing size profile, 6'4", 279, 33 3/4 inch arms, ran a 4.67. He's like what we were talking about with not being, the most explosive player, but he has good explosion into contact to create like knockback pop when he initiates his bull rush, and then surprising bend for a player of his size.
He was way more athletic than I thought he was going to be.
Yeah. He can turn the corner. He's got like had a couple wins with an inside spin. I think still needs to like grow his move set, but a really good starting point. He's an older player, and like I've been watching him for a few years because he's kind of been on the draft radar for a while. I just like never saw anything with him until this year. I was like, whoa, okay, this is a real player. So, late breakouts can be kind of concerning, but I think he had a lot of promising tape this year.
Yeah, there's some fun flashes for him. I saw him a bit today and kind of doing some prep for this episode. I need to finish my complete eval on him, but the thing that hit me immediately was I just knowing the size and frame, but then seeing him play, I was like, oh, you move very well for your size, and what they would do with him. And there was some fun stuff. He had some fun flashes, and not Harmon. Jamari Caldwell, interior defensive lineman, not an edge, like just moved way better than I thought for a dude who's 330 plus pounds. Oregon was a good squad this year, obviously with the season that they had. So, they kind of have talent in troves at different spots, but yeah, Birch is somebody who, just the size profile fits in terms of what they like. And the size, it's not just even the size profile plus the play style. I'm interested to see kind of where he goes, because it's hard to teach that level of athleticism paired with that kind of size. I'm also interested to see what he plays at from a weight perspective. Does he play into the 270s? Does somebody try to thicken him out a little bit? Kind of what do you want him for? Dependent scheme. Even with Oregon's defense, Dan Lanning coming from Georgia, you'd see Birch lined up in a 4-I and a 4 at different times, or teams going to try and pen him in as like a 3-4 defensive end with what he can do. Or I don't know, do you get a creative team that wants to drop him into coverage and do some different things because he has some athleticism? You kind of do some different stuff. Good call with Birch. Anybody else in this type of tier or conversation?
I think that's, I would say everybody else we can probably save for like day 3. There's some guys that might be on the border, but I think that kind of rounds out what I would say for day 2.
I agree. Well said. All right, let's move on to day 3, where the Bills have 7 of their 10 draft picks. For those who are unaware, 2 round 4 picks, 109 and 132, 3 picks in round 5, 169, 170, 173, and then 2 picks in round 6, 177 and 206. But from an edge perspective, there is still an opportunity for someone to potentially fall and be of value to the Bills in round 4, or you never know, later in day 3. So James, take it away with who you got in terms of day 3 draft edges or draft targets at edge.
So I think probably the first guy I would mention would be Savion Jones out of LSU.
Yeah.
Really like high motor player, great size at 280 pounds, 6'5", 34-inch arms. Not kind of like a clunky athlete, I think. But he did have an 82nd percentile 10-yard split, and he has like rare bend, I think, for his size. Some insane reps of him turning the corner. I wanted him at his size to be a more effective power rusher. So that was kind of my one biggest issue with him as a pass rusher. And then, like we were talking about, he's too stiff changing directions to like defend the mesh point. A lot of missed tackles because he just like couldn't close space quickly enough. But I think he could be just kind of like a really solid rotational piece with a good motor, good athlete, and like can kind of just be disruptive in a rotational role.
That's very fair. And I think that's a good way to kind of lead off this conversation part of it. And when you're getting into day 3, even if it's round 4, like you're hoping for someone if they could be a rotational guy, or you might hit the day 3 hits and guys who can develop into more and become plus starters or regular starters. But if you hit someone on day 3 that is a rotational guy for you and like that fits into that mold for you, that is most definitely a win, especially in something as unsure as the draft. I like Swinson. Or not Swinson. I confuse him and Jones all the time, and I don't know why, because their names are two completely different things. But I don't. I confuse their numbers all the time too. That's neither here nor there. My day 3 guy that I really like. Part of it is because of the nickname, but he's got some really good tape too. I like Kamen Rucker from North Carolina, whose nickname is the Butcher. I just think it's so badass. But some of his tape. And just, I also think, I wonder where he would be in the draft cycle right now if he didn't have that season-ending injury this past year. But he's another dude, different kind of play style than Josiah Stewart, but smaller, on the smaller side of things. But another guy for me who just plays like a velociraptor, against the run, how he plays the run with tenacity. I do think he needs better eye discipline. He can get caught kind of locking in a bit too much. One of the games I watched was against Georgia Tech because they just put so many defensive fronts in a blender when it comes to the run game, but also how physical they are up front. And I wanted to see how a dude in Rucker that's 6'1", 254 with 32.5-inch arms, how he would do against Georgia Tech. And he got hit more with the misdirection and being misled and getting caught with bad eyes, more so than he did like being physically dominated, which it's not great, but I saw that as a plus because I'm like, okay, that gives me a little hope for, what he can do against NFL size and strength. Although I do think that is going to be, an issue how he handles NFL size and strength. But someone who just plays with violence and juice, hand usage as a rusher, a variety of moves, a swipe, dip and rip, a ghost. He can go speed to power. He can go with a club or a hump. He's got a good cross chop. I think he needs more of an inside move presence. But I think he pairs, his arsenal with good rush angles to the quarterback, a good enough get off, and some snap anticipation as well. He's also got some athleticism to him, but I describe him as one of my buddies, Russell Brown, who does draft stuff for Fantasy Pros, described him as bulky in space. I describe him as like he's almost like he's moving in quicksand at times in space. Like he's athletic, but it's not like he's fleet of foot. And so it feels like he's moving quicksand.
He isn't very nimble.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, which is weird because like you'll see him on the line and there's not a ton of upfield burst, but it's not a negative there. He's got some upfield juice, but he's more of just like a power and explosion kind of guy. But you'll see it on the snap with how he can just go through somebody. And then in space, yeah, it's more there. He lacks that nimbleness to his feet. But I like some of the core strength he has. He's somebody that if he's there in round 4, I know he's a size outlier, especially for the Bills, but he's somebody who just with his production and what he was on tape, even going back to the 2023 tape before he changed numbers. I just thought, I really like the tape, and he's somebody who is the antithesis of what we talked about earlier. He got hurt and was working his way back from injury. So against Pitt this year, ACC, he only had 9 snaps. So a ton of his snaps aren't inflated by playing Pitt.
Yeah. I'm like, it's always funny how this ends up because I obviously never try to make it happen, but I'm right on consensus with Kamon Rucker. I've got him 184. He's 184 on the consensus board. I like the blend of being able to win with speed and power, but kind of like you mentioned, I worry about holding up in the run game in the NFL, and like he's a solid athlete, but for his size, he's probably an average to above average athlete. So I think like firmly a day 3 guy, but it wouldn't shock me if he ends up being kind of a nice change up edge defender.
Yeah, he's someone that like I think in an ideal world, to your point, like you're getting him at the end, or I shouldn't say end, like more middle day 3 type of guy. But I think with the production and some of the pieces that he has, like I could see him being like, okay, like get him in round 4. But I think ideally in a sweet spot is more like end of round 4, like into round 5, just because, again, as much as I hate saying this and continue to say that I hate saying this, I just wonder against NFL size and length. He's another guy, again, he's got a really good plan. This is different than the Jack Sawyer conversation, but like he does have good technique and plan and moves and an arsenal, but it's just so hard to win. And he's got much more violence and juice to his game than Sawyer. So that's what makes me feel a little bit better. But it is just, yeah, at some point, like it's going to be hard to kind of it's just such a different level of competition in the NFL. Especially a tackle. They're all big. They're all long. They're all strong. I mean, maybe they're all not so long, depending on if Will Campbell plays tackle or not, because everybody wants to make a big deal about that conversation. Where are you on that conversation? Do you think Will Campbell needs to be a guard, or do you think he can play tackle?
Oh, yeah, I think firmly a guard. Okay. But based on his tape, not really like, I mean, the length, there's plenty of good tackles with in that like 32 to 33 inch range. Like, the Colts love for his RAS focus as Chris Ballard is. He does not give a shit about arm length. So they've got some guys like, I remember, I'm a Titans fan, Michael Roos, probably the best tackle, one of the best tackles in franchise history, had like I think right under 33 inch arms. So yeah, I mean, I'm willing to make those exceptions, but like you have to have good foot speed and fluidity, and I felt like that got exposed against like pretty much everybody that he faced this year that's going to be drafted either this draft or the next draft. Like R. Mason Thomas for Oklahoma gave him issues. Dallas Turner gave him issues last year. Quay Robinson gave him issues for Alabama this year. Had some losses against the Texas A&M guys. Kyle Kennard gave him fits. Like something I always see is people be like, until he proves on tape that he can't be a tackle, like he's a tackle. It's like, I feel like he kind of proved that on tape, but that's my opinion.
I like that. Well, I kind of think he proved it on tape. I looked up, I always just love looking up like older like dudes from the league. And so I went and looked up Michael Roos's stuff. Cause I immediately, as soon as you mentioned him, I remembered him. And I always thought I remember the spelling of his name, the R and the double O and the S. I forgot just how big he was. So he was 6'7", 320 pounds. But at 6'7", 320 pounds, he ran a 4.52 40.
No, wait, that's not that. I think that has to be a typo.
That's what he's listed at on Mock Draftable.
4.52.
Offensive tackle. Yep, Michael Roos. He ran a 4.
No, he ran a 5.15.
20. Sorry, 4.52 20. My fault. 5.3.
Yeah.
I was like, what? Yeah, that's my fault. I read it wrong on Mock Draftable. That's on me. That's why I was really like, I got to call this out.
That's the same 40 times that Malachi Starks ran.
What do you think on Malachi? What do you think about Malachi Starks? Does he have a first round grade for you?
Let me see. He's to me, he's pretty comfortably safety 2 in this class.
Who's safety 1? Emin Worry for you?
Yeah, but I had that take pre-combine, so like okay. I'm allowed to say it.
You're not.
I straight up I thought Eamon Worry like, and I was like paying attention to Eamon Worry from week 1 because I saw he was in Feldman's freak list. He was at the top of my list to watch every week, and I thought he had better tape than Starks this year. To me, Starks. So I have an early second on Starks. He is 21st on my board. I think Starks is a really good and versatile player, but I feel like he's kind of coasting off of some name recognition and the fact that he's been he's been on the radar as like a blue chip draft prospect since his first start when he made that interception against Oregon in like the Chick-fil-A kickoff bowl or whatever. Yeah. And I mean, he was a really good player for like the first 1.5 years of his 3-year career. I think he was like a top 10 caliber prospect. He had a really rough end to the season last year. And then this year they were playing him out of position,
Yes.
playing him basically as a nickel. Like
Yep.
he had more man coverage snaps from the slot than anyone in college football that's listed as a safety. And so that caused him to get beat a lot more, and it limited his opportunities to like make plays on the ball.
Yeah.
But I thought when he was at deep safety, just like his play recognition and his eyes, I think are really inconsistent. And like the coverage busts and some of the tightness, changing directions, and just like the overall career trajectory is kind of troubling to me with Starks. So yeah, I prefer Eman Worry for sure.
I really, really like Starks, but there's something, and a lot of it is some of the stuff you mentioned. There's something, and I hate saying this, but like there's like something I just can't shake about what I don't like about him. Like there's just something that's missing for me. Like I feel incomplete or like empty to a degree, like when I watch him. And there's a lot of great flashes. You mentioned the out of position stuff. I thought that, did a disservice to him having to play that star apex role in that defense. But yeah, there's just the angles to the ball and his eyes are a big one for me. There's a play, I think the ball goes to Matthew Golden. I think it's in the SEC championship. It's cover 2. And
yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yep, towards the top of the screen. And he makes a break on the ball, and you can see the whole Georgia sideline get up because they think he's going to pick it. And he should have. Like, he just took such a bad angle to the ball, and it gets over him. Golden catches it. He runs down Golden and makes the tackle. But everybody's, like, jumping up, even Kirby Smart, and you can watch them go, like, what happened? Like, it just some of his angles to the ball in the air, and even some like coming up as a run defender at times. And that's even more worrisome as a run defender if you don't have the athleticism or the speed to kind of make up for it, which he's not a bad athlete, but he's not a plus athlete. Yeah,
I'll give him a pass though, because like a couple of those were against Jalen Milroe, who's an absolute alien.
Bro, he's so nuts. The vision, the speed, the foot speed, like it. I picked South Carolina for my NCAA 25 dynasty, which is part of why I like Eman Worry. But I wanted to. I thought Bama was going to be too overpowered. I wanted to play as Jalen Milroe so bad because he's like a real life video game character. Like he's just so he's never met a corner that he couldn't turn or a gap that he couldn't just Sonic the Hedgehog through. Like the speed is absolutely unreal. Safety is interesting for me. I'm a bit down on Eman Worry. I really like Xavier Watts. I like some stuff that Makuba does. The safety class, I think, is really like interesting. I also feel like every year it just feels like whoever the preseason safety one is doesn't end up testing well and has a bit of a down year. Like a couple seasons ago, it was Cam Kitchens, and then you saw poor testing and some questions on tape. He was another guy with angles and kind of riskiness in terms of kind of going rogue at times in coverage. He had a good rookie year for the Rams, actually. And then Starks was like, a top 5 or even a top 10 dude coming into this season. And then there's some questions on tape. And I always wonder, like, the prospect fatigue versus testing and it feels like year after year, it continues to hit the safety grouping, which is also kind of like a devalued position. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I sort of think prospect fatigue is a bunch of like BS.
It happened with Will Anderson. That's why a bunch of people were putting Tyree whatever ahead of him. Tyree, I can't even remember now because he went to the Raiders and hasn't done anything. Like,
did people have Tyree Wilson over Will Anderson?
Yeah, you don't remember that? That was like a legit, like the more we got closer to April, it was like, well, okay, the floor can be all right for Will Anderson, but he's really just a run defender and a speed to power guy. Tyree Wilson can be the complete package coming out of Texas Tech. And then people started to put him like a significant amount of voices started having Wilson over Anderson or thought he was like the higher ceiling, better prospect, better player. That's the biggest example of prospect fatigue for me because I remember going into it. I was like,
that is a pretty good example.
Yeah, I was like, what are we? I remember, yeah, because I was at the Senior Bowl, and granted, not necessarily everybody at that time. Even there were people that we were having conversations with where it was like, yeah, man, Tyree Wilson. And I remember just getting back like at the end of the day every day and talking to my closer people and just being like, what is happening here? Like, why are people acting like Will Anderson is not good at football and Tyree Wilson is everything? And granted, part of it, I didn't see all the pluses with Wilson, but yeah, I think I think prospect fatigue can be a real thing. Although I think it's a different kind of example for Starks. But yeah, it feels like
To me, I think it's like a lot of times people. It's like there's a guy that's ranked highly on the PFF mock draft simulator, and like no shot at Trevor, but that's usually the first way that people are introduced to prospects is because it's like one of the first boards that comes out. And so like they're ranked high early in the year. People just kind of assume, okay, these are like the top 10 guys. And then if it turns out that they don't have a great season, or maybe, maybe Trevor was actually like kind of off a consensus on that. Yeah. And like then different opinions start to come in, then people call it prospect fatigue. It's like, just because like your initial thought, like might end up being wrong. It's like, and the other one that kills me is people are overthinking like prospects. Like sometimes that does happen, but by overthinking you mean watching their most recent tape and like evaluating it, it's like that's properly thinking a player.
Yeah, it's dotting the I's and crossing the T's. The mock draft simulators, I think, are a big one for like, I can't tell you how many, and I understand it. I don't necessarily think it's like because everybody operates differently, especially if you're just like, more of a casual fan. But the amount of like comments I get for like, man, like, I really like this player, like would target him in round 2. And then the amount of like, I'll get like, oh, well, like I got him in my PFF mock in round 5. So like, what are you saying he's in round 2? And I'm like, God. Like it just like
it's like that just means he's like on one board like at a certain point.
That's one thing. Like even just from the side of like everybody evaluates differently, but yeah, I get that. Like, or even just like the opposite. You'll do, because I do those PFF mocks all the time. Like if I'm waiting in line at like the car wash, or like I'm in like the waiting room at the doctor's, I'm like, I'm gonna do like a mock for fun real quick. And yeah, like I'll get like, they'll be like, oh, like I can't believe you took so-and-so in the 3rd round. Like, that's why they gave you a D, because he should be taken in the 6th. I'm like, that's just because that's what their ranking system has. That's just one place. It's just one thing. Any other day 3 edges that you want to talk about or hit
on? So I kind of mentioned Quay Robinson. I think he's a really interesting day 3 edge. Sort of like Alabama's Jalen Walker, as a guy that played off-ball linebacker. Like I would say it felt like a majority, or at least like half of his snaps. But like his best tape is rushing the passer. I actually thought Quay Robinson's linebacker tape was better than Jalen Walker's, which like didn't really move me at all. But Quay Robinson he holds like arguably the most dominant long arm rep in this entire class, where he, like if you pause it at a certain point, the South Carolina right tackle is like 2 feet off the ground.
I was going to say it's the rep insane. Where like he's coming from, the camera angle is behind Bama's defense, and he's coming from the left side against the right tackle, and he gets him on the inside shoulder and just jacks him up completely.
Yep. And like, he's fast and explosive, but I think my my issue with him is, and like I've got him 119 on my board. I think he's a sleeper for sure, but his bend isn't great based on like you normally expect kind of the speed rusher types to have better bend, and he's not like he isn't a consistently effective power rusher. He has some flashes of dominance, but he's not like going to push the pocket, snap after snap. But yeah, an interesting developmental guy. And, I never really have too many day 3 edge rushers that I'm like a huge proponent of, because it's either like this guy has an incredibly low ceiling and he's going to be like your edge 5, or like he's just such a project gamble,
or a size
looking down the rest of my
list. Something that's like
there's just not a lot of guys that really excite me like super late in the draft, because if there's someone that excites me, I give them an early draft grade.
Higher grade. No, that's super fair. Again, that's part of the reason my like Rucker, I feel like is my perfect kind of day 3, where I'm like, oh, he does a lot of really good things, but then
Antoine Powell Ryland is kind of similar to that for Virginia Tech.
I was going to ask you about that because somebody in the chat, Ron, said, "What do you guys think about Powell Riley? He seems a bit tight but powerful." I thought this was a great way to phrase it from Ron in the chat because there is the power. You see the explosion through contact, the tightness in his overall build. I feel like he's top heavy, and the tightness bothers me. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So I just briefly mentioned him because I watched like the first 5 games of his season, but I watched them like in real time. So I watched them so long ago that I barely remember that much about his tape. But I did give him a mid 5th round grade based off of that, and I need to like I'm working on an edge rankings video, so he's one of the guys that I need to like catch up on. But I do remember liking some of his tape, and like he tested really well. And I would also say Colin Oliver for Oklahoma State, who got injured, but he's like a linebacker to edge convert, and apparently had like I've seen some people say like his 2023 tape was a lot better. I watched a few games of 2023. I think he can be like a decent speed to power, like powerful speed rusher type of archetype of player.
Oh, very fair. Very fair. Yeah, there's a lot of I have to because this edge class is so deep, I really do feel like there's like I have to get through like 30 edges to be able because I feel like there's so many dart throw guys on day 3, but it's really fun, a really fun grouping and a lot of value, like we talked about for this. I mean, I think even just reflected like when I'm putting the timestamps together for this episode, the second segment where we talked about the round 2 guys is so much longer compared to everything else because there's so much value, especially in round 2. But the round 2, round 3 guys at edge, and even maybe into early 4, depending on who falls, where we see some runs. I'm really interested to kind of see how this grouping as a whole like falls out and plays through. James, anything on your mind before I let you go for the rest of the night?
Yeah, have you heard that Drake song Mothballs where he's like, I was stressing over Bills like a Buffalo fan?
No, I have no, that's wild. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I've been that song has been stuck in my head all day. He's like, I'm not gonna sing it, but yeah, I always think of y'all here at Cover One when I hear that, and I'm like, man, these last few years must have been stressful, like fun, but because I envy you as a Titans fan, being in the key moments. But yeah, I'm rooting for y'all to get over the hump for sure.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been I've always said it like growing up, all the adults in my family, like men and women, would all talk about like the 90s Bills, and as if it was like some would talk about it as like how revered they were and how great they were, but a lot of like family and friends and just adults talked about it like it was like war stories, like how people's grandparents talk about like Vietnam or whatever. And I have always said like I don't think if I was in my consciousness now, like then, I think I would have mentally broke with 4 straight Super Bowls and 4 straight losses because like I just can't. I'm very grateful that the Bills are like successful now and a Final Four team every year and AFC Championship appearances and winning the division. But man, it's just so tough to get like close and then you feel like you're getting there and then you're not. And these Bills teams don't have anything compared to going to 4 straight and then losing all 4. It's just, yeah, man, it beats the drought and it beats being a laughing stock for forever, ever since God, that stupid Music City Miracle, man. That stupid game. Oh man. And then I root it. And then
the Titans aren't even a laughing stock. They're just irrelevant. Like no one it's like the meme, like I don't think about you at all.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah. But I mean, they have some stuff to hang their head on. Who knows? Maybe they'll turn the tide. Anything you got coming out? Anything you have put out recently, or anything you got coming out that you want to plug before you say goodbye?
Yeah, check out my YouTube channel. I'm doing positional rankings there, and just posted receiver rankings. Went through like 42 players, so a lot of good information there. And you can find my YouTube channel just if you search James Foster, it should be the first thing that pops up.
James does sincerely good work for those of you who don't know, but I should hope you know by now. Yeah, I think I first had you on. I don't remember if we met during draft season. I think maybe like 2 or 3 seasons ago, and then we did a Bills Titans episode. We've done multiple draft episodes, and yeah, for those who don't know, James does between tape and analytics and knowing what's up, like does a sincerely good job in terms of player evaluation, prospect rankings, big board, his individual player boards. And it's not, as we talked about and alluded to earlier, it's not reflective of other people's boards. You know, it is truly what he thinks, and it's based on a lot of tape study, a lot of time, and a lot of effort. It is well worth your time. So if you haven't checked his work out, go give it a look see. And you have one of the best handles on Twitter at No Flags Film, which I think is absolutely tremendous. I like to shout that out every time. James, you crushed it. I appreciate the hell out of you. Go enjoy what's left of your Tuesday night. I'm sure I'll see you on social. And yeah, thanks for stopping by. I appreciate the hell out of you.
Thanks for having me, man.
Later. Good stuff from James Foster. I talked to him a couple weeks ago and kind of prepping for this episode, or making sure that he was available. So yeah, he's a good dude, really good work and good stuff from everybody in the chat in this episode as well. Appreciate you folks. Going to throw up the banner for sponsor of this show, One Pie Pizza. If you didn't know, the best pizza in Buffalo, New York. Delicious sweet sauce pie, cup of char pepperoni. If you get different toppings, they chop them all up and sprinkle them evenly across the whole pizza pie. They make their own homemade blue cheese. They have an excellent cheese to sauce ratio. They also do catering, mac and cheeses, and different types of foods. They make a ton of delicious stuff, and they also do a very good job in terms of giving back to the community. Probably partner with Roswell to try to knock out cancer. They partner with the SPCA, the Alzheimer's Foundation. They do Toys for Tots every holiday season. They are really good people making really good food. So if you want some delicious food, pizza, whatever have you, go get yourself some One Pie Pizza. Online menu can be found in the episode show notes, whether here on YouTube or, again, whichever podcasting app or platform you are listening to this show on. When you go to One Pie Pizza, mention that Cover One and or Disguise Coverage sent you, and maybe you'll get a special little treat. Also, they named a pizza after the show, and it's amazing. So go get yourself some of that One Pie Pizza. I'm going to throw up the banner that says Toodles, folks, because we're going to start to wind down here and say goodbye. If you have not already, please, 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 and thank you. Drop a like on this video if you are willing and able here on YouTube. Likes go a sincerely long way towards helping myself and the entire team to track and trend in front of more eyes and ears. So if you have not already dropped a like on this video, please do so here on YouTube. If you're listening on one of the podcasting apps or platforms, please rate, review, and subscribe. Here on YouTube, turn on notifications for the Disguise Coverage playlist. Check out the entirety of the Cover One channel, all the various levels of content and shows we have for you on the brand. Tell your family and friends and loved ones about how awesome this show was and how awesome this channel is. If you thought this show was terrible, tell your enemies and try and ruin their day by making them watch this show or me. I appreciate you folks more than you know. Thank you for all the kind words coming through the chat, and for James stopping by. Thank you for the kind words for James from the chat throughout the entirety of this episode. And yeah, this is the first in the series of kind of these positional deep dives that we are going to have. I have another guest next Tuesday, April 8th, 9 p.m. Eastern, for another position grouping, and then another guest the following week after that for another position grouping, and then another guest for the following week to kind of build out what the perfect Buffalo Bills draft will look like. So it's kind of a mock draft, kind of not. And so I'm very excited for the next several weeks and the guests that I have lined up for each week for that. So I hope you folks enjoyed this episode. If you have any questions, thoughts, comments, concerns that I didn't answer or didn't get to, leave them in the comments on YouTube and I'll get to them, or you can get at me on Twitter at pro__ant. That's pro2_ANT, or you can get at me on Blue Sky at proant. No underscores there, just PROANT. Any questions, thoughts, comments, concerns about anything in general, or again, if there was something specific that I didn't get to tonight, please get at me here on YouTube or social or whatever you got, and I will get to your questions as soon as I can. Appreciate everybody who stopped by. Thank you if you tuned in live. If you didn't tune in live, that's cool too. Thank you very much for your view or listen or download, whatever have you. I hope you and your family and friends and loved ones are all doing well and staying safe. Be kind to one another. Take care of one another. I will see you when I see you. Godspeed. And as always, Go Bills.